Would you like to have adventures beyond your wildest imagination? Or travel to far distant lands? You can, you know, in books. Welcome to Reading with Mrs. Adams. I'm Mrs. Adams, and I would like to read 3 stories to you today and 2 poems as always. The books that we're going to read today are all about bears. The first story we're going to read today is called Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. Goldilocks and the 3 Bears is a fairy tale. All fairy tales were told to teach children a lesson, to help them make better choices. Are you ready to listen to Goldilocks and the 3 Bears? Let's get started.
Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, retold and illustrated by Jan Brett. Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, retold and illustrated by Jan Brett. For Betty, Sally, and Joe, and for Miriam. Once upon a time there were 3 bears who lived together in a house of their own in a wood. One of them was a little small wee bear, and one was a middle-sized bear, and the other was a great, huge bear. They each had a bowl for their porridge, a little bowl for the little small wee bear, a middle-sized bowl for the middle-sized bear, and a great huge bowl for the great huge bear. And they each had a chair to sit in, a little chair for the little small wee bear, a middle-sized chair for the middle-sized bear, and a great huge chair for the great huge bear. And they each had a bed to sleep in, a little bed for the little small wee bear, a middle-sized bed for the middle-sized bear, and a great huge bed for the great huge bear. One day, after they made their porridge for breakfast and poured it into their porridge bowls, they walked out into the woods while the porridge was cooling. And while they were walking, a little girl named Goldilocks came to their house. First, she looked at the window. Then she peeped in at the keyhole, and seeing no one was at home, she lifted the latch. The door opened before her, and in she went. How pleased Goldilocks was when she saw the steaming porridge on the table. The sweet smell of the porridge with roasted nuts, honey, and berries filled the room. It was so tempting that Goldilocks set about helping herself. First she tasted the porridge in the great huge bear, but it was too hot. Then she tasted the porridge of the middle-sized bear, but it was too cold. And then she tried the porridge of the little small wee bear, and it was neither too hot nor too cold. It was just right. She liked it so much that she ate it all up. Then Goldilocks sat down in the chair of the great huge bear, but it was too hard for her. Then she sat down in the chair of the middle-sized bear, but it was too soft for her. And then she sat down in the chair of the little small wee bear, and this chair was neither too hard nor too soft, but just right. So Goldilocks seated herself in it, and there she sat until the bottom of the chair gave way, and down she came plump upon the floor. Then Goldilocks went upstairs to the bedroom in which the 3 bears slept. First she lay down upon the bed of the great huge bear. But that was too high at the head for her. Next she lay down upon the bed of the middle-sized bear, but that was too high at the foot for her. Then she lay down upon the bed of the little small wee bear, and that was neither too high at the head nor the foot, but just right. So she covered herself up comfortably and fell fast asleep. By this time, the three bears thought their porridge would be cool enough to eat, so they returned home for breakfast. Now Goldilocks had left the spoon of the great huge bear standing in his porridge.
"Somebody has been at my porridge,"
said the great huge bear in his great rough, gruff voice. And when the middle-sized bear looked at hers, she saw that the spoon was standing in it too. "Somebody has been at my porridge," said the middle-sized bear in her middle-sized voice. Then the little small wee bear looked at his bowl, and the spoon was in the porridge bowl, but the porridge was all gone. "Somebody has been at my porridge and has eaten it all up," said the little small wee bear in his little small wee voice. Upon this, the three bears, seeing that someone had entered their house and eaten up little small wee bear's breakfast, began to look about them. Now Goldilocks had not put the hard cushion straight when she rose from the chair of the great huge bear.
"Somebody has been sitting in my chair,"
said the great huge bear in his great rough gruff voice. And Goldilocks had crumpled the soft cushion of the middle-sized bear. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair," said the middle-sized bear in her middle-sized voice. And you know what Goldilocks had done to the third chair. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair and has set the bottom right out of it," said the little small wee bear in his little small wee voice. Then the bears thought it necessary that they should make a further search, so they went upstairs to their bedroom. Now Goldilocks had pulled the pillow of the great huge bear out of its place.
"Somebody has been lying in my bed,"
said the great huge bear in his great rough gruff voice. And Goldilocks had pulled the cover of the middle-sized bear out of its place. "Somebody has been lying in my bed," said the middle-sized bear in her middle-sized voice. And then the little small wee bear came to look at his bed. There was Goldilocks, sleeping peacefully, her long shiny braids spread across his pillow. Little small wee bear just stared at her for a moment and didn't say anything. But then he cried, "Somebody has been lying in my bed, and here she is!" Goldilocks had heard in her sleep the great rough gruff voice of the great huge bear and the middle-sized voice of the middle-sized bear, but it was only as if she had heard someone speaking in a dream. But when she heard the little small wee voice of the little small wee bear, it was so sharp and so shrill and so like her own that it awakened her at once. Up she started, and when she saw the three bears on one side of the bed, she tumbled herself off the other and ran to the window. Out Goldilocks jumped and ran away as fast as she could run, not looking behind her until she was very far away. And what happened to Goldilocks afterwards? No one can tell, but the three bears never saw anything more of her. And that is the end of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, retold and illustrated by Jan Brett.
Now I'm going to read a poem to you. It's called Bear Cub's Day. So you have to use your imagination because I won't be showing you any pictures. But it goes like this. Bear Cub's Day. Black bear cub trotted after his mother, tumbled and tussled in play with his brother, romped and roared in a wrestling match, snatched some lunch in a blueberry patch, climbed tall trees without any fear, fished for fish where the stream ran clear, curled at last in a furry heap, too tired for anything else but sleep. And that's written by Margaret Hillert. What we're going to read today is called Two Orphan Cubs by Barbara Brenner and May Gerlich, and the illustrations are by Erica Kors. This book is actually a true story. It's not something that was made up. It was written about two actual bear cubs that were orphaned by their mother and not on purpose. Let's get ready to listen to Two Orphan Cubs.
Two Orphan Bear Cubs by Barbara Brenner, illustrated by Erica Kors. Two Orphan Bear Cubs by Barbara Brenner and May Gerlich, illustrated by Erica Kors. Two Orphan Bear Cubs. This is a true story about black bears. It begins in winter, in a bear den hidden between two rocks. Winter. The mother black bear was asleep. Beside her lay her two tiny hairless bear babies, each about the size of a hamster. Their eyes weren't open yet. They couldn't see anything in the den. They couldn't even see their mother, right there beside them. But the cubs knew she was there. They could feel her tongue licking them. They could feel her soft, furry body. The two newborn bears nuzzled the warm fur of their mother's belly until they found her milk. They nursed, purring like kittens. Then they slept. And then they nursed some more. And they slept again. The mother bear slept too, but she didn't eat or drink all through the cold days of winter. 2 months went by. Inside the den, the cubs were growing. Now they were as big as rabbits. Their bodies were covered with black fur, like their mother's. It covered their ears, their legs, and their fat little bellies. Their eyes were open now. They could see, and their baby teeth were coming in. Spring. Winter was turning into spring. Green grass began to poke through the snow. Slivers of sun shone into the den. Mother bear stirred, grunted, and went back to sleep. Then one day she woke up. What was it that woke her? Outside the den, the air was soft and warm. Did she smell it? Could she feel spring in her bones? The mother bear sat up and blinked away sleep. Something told her this was the day the cubs would have their first look at green grass, the day she would begin to teach them to poke their paws into a log for bugs and to scurry up a tree to get away from danger. But first, she would go out alone and look around. With soft huffing noises, the mother called the cubs to her. She licked them. Then she woofed at them as if to say, "Stay." At 3 months, the cubs didn't know much, but they understood that sound. They knew enough to stay. The mother black bear left the den. The two little bears waited for her to come back. Hours passed. The last rays of sun left the woods. The den was damp and dark. The cubs began to shiver. It was cold without their mother's warm fur. They snuggled close and nuzzled each other, looking for milk. But there was no milk. They cried themselves to sleep. When the cubs woke up, the mother bear was still not there. Now they were very hungry. Their yelps began to sound frantic. How long could two nursing cubs last without their mother? At 10 o'clock that morning, Gary Alt's Jeep came through the woods. Gary is a wildlife scientist who studies black bears. He had come to the den to check on the bear he called Lulu. He heard whimpering coming from inside. When he shined his light into the den, he could see the eyes of the cubs, but no mother, no Lulu. Gary was worried. A mother bear never leaves her cubs for long, and she always comes back if she hears them crying. What could have happened? Gary looked around outside. Behind a clump of bushes, he saw boot prints and two pink ear tags. Lulu was the only bear with pink identification tags. Gary had put them on her himself. Then he saw the empty gun shell, and he knew what had happened. Lulu had been shot by a poacher. Gary felt terrible. There was nothing he could do about Lulu, but he had to try to save her babies. He crawled into the den and reached for the cubs. When he grabbed them, they nipped his hands, but their baby teeth couldn't bite through his thick gloves. He tucked the trembling little bears into a sack and crawled out of the den. He talked softly to them. "There, there, easy does it. We're on our way to find your new mama." Gary drove to another den deep in the woods. In that den was the bear he named Molly. He knew that Molly was nursing two cubs of her own. He hoped that she would adopt Lulu's cubs and make them part of her family. But how to get them into her den? That was tricky. If Molly awoke and smelled Gary, she might attack him. Even gentle black bears may attack to protect their cubs. But he had to take the chance. Gary lifted the cubs out of the sack and put them on a shovel. The cubs squealed and squirmed, but when he patted them, they settled down. He tiptoed to the den. No sound from inside. Molly was asleep. He slid the baby bears off the shovel and into the den hole. Did Molly see the two cubs? Would she lick them or bite them? Would she adopt them or would she push them out of the den? Gary waited. 10 minutes passed. Then he heard licking sounds. He took a chance and turned on his flashlight. There was Molly, licking the orphans. They had found her milk, and she was letting them nurse. She had adopted them and would raise them as her own. Now Molly had 4 cubs, and the 2 orphans had a new mother. Mother Molly. A week later, Molly was wide awake. She sniffed the air. It smelled sweet and warm. Something told her this was a good day to take her cubs outdoors. She looked out. It was safe. With a gentle huff, she called the 4 little bears. she led them out of the den and into the field. Then she did what all bear mothers do. She took the cubs to a clump of green. They had their first taste of grass and skunk cabbage. She showed them how to poke their paws into a log for bugs. She taught them to scurry up a tree to get away from danger. Soon Molly will show them the black bear trails. She will teach them where to find wild blueberries and where bees keep their honey. In 2 years, when they know what bears have to know, the cubs will go off on their own. Gary Alt is a real person. He's a wildlife biologist whose specialty is black bears. As part of his research, he tracks their movements and sets harmless bear traps to catch them. When Gary catches a bear, he tranquilizes it and gives it a number tattoo and a pair of ear tags. If it's a female bear, he fits her with a radio collar so he can follow her movements. The collar sends out radio signals that he can pick up on a receiver. These signals help him to locate the bear at any time and to check on her movements. If something should happen to her later, when she has her cubs, he can locate another female bear with cubs and place the orphan cubs with her. In this picture, Gary is fitting a radio collar on a tranquilized black bear. Gary Alt has placed over 100 orphan cubs with new bear mothers, and he has tagged over 2,000 bears. And that is the end of Two Orphan Cubs by Barbara Brenner and May Gerlich, illustrated by Erica Kors.
The next poem that I'd like to share with you is called One Fine Day. It's about a bear who climbs a tree in search of a beehive so he can eat some honey. It goes like this. One fine day. One fine day in the woods I saw a bear in a honey tree licking his paw. A bee buzzed by, and what do you suppose? The bee stung the bear on the tip of his nose. Ouch, said the bear as he slid down the tree. I do like the honey, but I don't like the bee. Our last story today, boys and girls, is by Bill Martin Jr., and it's illustrated by Eric Carle. It's called Brown Bear, What Do You See? Let's get ready to listen to Brown Bear,
Brown bear, what do you see? Brown bear, what do you see? By Bill Martin Jr., pictures by Eric Carle. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Yellow duck, what do you see? I see a blue horse looking at me. Blue horse, what do you see? I see a green frog looking at me. Green frog, what do you see? I see a purple cat looking at me. Purple cat, what do you see? I see a white dog looking at me. White dog, what do you see? I see a black sheep looking at me. Black sheep, what do you see? I see a goldfish looking at me. Goldfish, what do you see? I see a teacher looking at me. Teacher, what do you see? I see beautiful children looking at me. Children, children, what do you see? We see a brown bear, a red bird, a yellow duck, a blue horse, a green frog, a purple cat, a white dog, a black sheep, a goldfish, and a teacher looking at us. That's what we see. And that's the end of Brown Bear, written by Bill Martin Jr., pictures by Eric Carle.
I had a wonderful time reading to you today, boys and girls. There is one truth I know, that God loves you very much, and so do I. So dare to dream the impossible, because with God, all things are possible. I love you, and I'll see you next time on Reading with Mrs. Adams. Goodbye.